Welcome to Age, Pension, Super and Retirement. I'm your host Yvonne, and as always, this is information and opinion only and not personal advice. Continuing on with our series on aged care, we're going to discuss a very complex issue, which is how to decide if your loved one should be kept at home. And once again, I'd like to welcome back the Director of Prosperity Planning Partners, Gayle McHugh.
Thank you. It's nice to be here again.
Gayle, this is something that if I hear about how to decide if a loved one should be kept at home, it's an emotionally charged area, and top of mind I think of falls and illnesses, not being able to toilet, all these sort of things. But I'm wondering if you perhaps would be able to lead us in this decision-making process, Gayle.
Yes, I can to a degree. I say to a degree because every family is different. And one of our biggest barriers to decision making, so that we've got mum or dad as the primary focus of all decisions, that has to be one of our biggest priorities. And sadly, it's one of the things that most families struggle with. Personally, I look at these situations and go, mum or dad's safety is far more important than, as you said, whether there's a fall risk or whether they aren't able to look after their personal care needs. These all have to be considered. But for me, the key part is, are mum or dad capable of living at home alone, unsupervised, and safely? That's if there's a single person. Now, if there's a husband and wife and one or the other is providing care and support for the other party, we have to look at something entirely different. And that is the physical and mental health of the carer. And I'm going to share with you something I said to my aunt, because we've lived this as a family. My uncle was very unwell. He used to fall all the time, to the point where the New South Wales ambulance service actually just knew if they got a phone call what was happening. My aunt's physical health and her mental health was horrendous because of her need to keep him at home, because my uncle had always made the statement of, "You'll take me out of here in a box." And my aunt felt she had to meet that obligation. And sadly, she got very ill. He was incapable of helping and supporting her. So it got to the point where the doctors made the decision that he had to go to aged care. So it's really important for the whole scenario to be considered: the health of the carer, if there is a carer, and the safety of both the carer and the individual needing care. They're both key components in a decision as to whether somebody should be kept at home and whether they may need to move to care. The other thing to consider is the home care package that your loved one has. Now, it's not surprising that sometimes people have no idea of what I mean by a home care package, because they've never entered the aged care assessment process. So therefore, they're not even eligible for or receiving support in the home. And it's all falling on family. So my key factor here is, please make sure that every one of your loved ones, as they age, and this applies to anyone over 65, by the way, that you have registered for My Aged Care. And because there are some services that you can have that will keep you in the home, because that was discussed in the previous session on home care packages. But the most important part about it is actually accessing the system that will help you keep your loved ones at home.
Interesting that you should put a number on it, like 65. So are you saying that 65 is when people are eligible for this?
You can start to register. It may not mean that you need services, but you can start to register. I have a lovely couple who are clients, and he has got diminishing eyesight because of an issue that he has recently developed. And he said to me, "Gayle, I should have been on this from age 65. And I went, I'm really sorry. I didn't realise it covered your vision. So he's getting special services from Vision Australia that basically help him stay at home because he's now got things that magnify his whatever he's trying to read. He's got things that will read him books rather than having to read. So there's a whole pile of reasons why you might be entering into the My Aged Care system, but most people don't know.
This is a key takeaway, knowing that people can register from age 65. I mean, the worst is that they might not qualify, but to get that system underway.
Exactly. And the thing is, it can be things like physio. And of course, if that's going to help minimise a falls risk, they want people to stay at home. There's a whole range of codes that are issued when you have an aged care assessment done. And depending upon your code and what they think you need, I've seen up to 8 different codes issued. And that's basically going, well, we know that this person needs physio to keep them stable and safe at home. We know that they need an OT to adjust some of the things at home for them, which is OT being an occupational therapist. So there's a whole range of reasons why you would explore whatever is available within the aged care system, and you do that at myagedcare.gov.au. That's where you basically go and find the services that will keep you or help you keep your loved one at home.
Gayle, you mentioned the word codes. Could you just speak on that for a little bit more, what that actually refers to?
Well, the codes that are issued by the ACAT team determine what services you're able to access using that specific code. So the ones that I saw recently had 8. One of them related to physical residency in an aged care facility. Another part gave them access to respite care. And this is really important when people go, oh, there's respite care, and that's actually for the carer. So if the carer has a special need, for example, to just relax and recover from caring for a loved one consistently and being drained, that's good enough reason for someone to access the residential respite care that's available. And in some instances, depending upon your package, if you haven't spent it, some of the providers will actually allow that to be paid, that respite cost from your package. So keep this in mind, because the whole system, the home care package and the residential respite stuff, is meant to help keep your loved one at home and keep the carer healthy enough to keep the loved one at home.
And thank you for mentioning respite and how that works a little bit, because this is something that we're going to be talking about and unpacking in our next episode. There are so many complex reasons in this decision-making process. Have you heard of when someone perhaps doesn't want to allow carers into their home as an objection?
Yes, I have. In fact, I'm aware of a case right now where the lady will currently abuse her carers that are entering her home, even though her power of attorney has said, yes, we've taken this package, because the lady has lost her decision-making capacity, and she has abused one of her carers to the point where she's stopped them from even entering the home, even though they're there to actually support her. So the compromise has been that the power of attorney has to be there while the carer is there doing all the bits and pieces to support the person to stay at home. And unfortunately, this is not being untrue. It's being very factual. People sometimes, when they lose capacity, tend to accuse people of doing things that they haven't done. It's ridiculously horrible if you're on the receiving end. Of course, I have been with a loved one having dementia. You know that you've done nothing wrong. The carer knows that they've done nothing wrong. But the person who's got the challenge with having that carer into the house, they basically refuse to allow it, even though it's in their best interest. So it's very emotional, can be very draining. Just keep going, knowing that you're doing the right thing by your loved one.
Thank you, Gayle. It does sound emotional and very, very complex for all involved. Gayle, sometimes the decision could be taken out of our loved one's hands, perhaps by a medical professional, what happens then, Gayle?
So I've got a bucket load of stories in relation to this, and I'm going to tell stories because it helps convey why things happen. I have an awareness of a lady who was a constant falls risk. She fell, she broke her right shoulder. We had an aged care bed available for her, and she was in the hospital and she fell out of bed and broke her hip. So we had to get her rehabilitated. Her entry to care was based on the fact that she was no longer safe to stay at home on her own. She couldn't cook for herself. She couldn't bathe herself. So she'd lost her daily living activities capabilities effectively. And that was a decision forced by medical practitioners. They went, no, you cannot live at home safely. In another instance I know of, the lady almost burnt the house down because she had dementia, and she put a pot on the stove and walked away and left it, and it turned into a fire. So the family compromised, initially thinking, oh, we'll just get a safety switch in and basically isolate the cooktop so she can't cook. And that worked for a bit. But then effectively she wasn't still capable of living at home because she couldn't cook. And once the medical practitioners found out about that one, because again, she'd taken a tumble and broke her leg, they went, no, you have to go to residential aged care. We're not letting you home to live on your own. And that can be a decision made by the medical practitioners. And another scenario is that there has been no aged care assessment done, and there's an emergency one done in hospital. And they will then at times force people into the position of saying, person A is not capable of going home, so therefore we will release person A into the care of an aged care facility, but they cannot go home. They cannot be released into the care of a loved one because there isn't sufficient support to keep them safe. And in that instance, the not having the respite option totally throws a spanner in the works when it comes to figuring out how to fund aged care fees for permanent residency. As a financial planner, I love the opportunity of using residential respite as a key part of getting money ready so that we can minimise the damage done to the financials of a family by a forced entry to care.
Gayle, I love your examples, both your professional experience and your personal lived experience. It really does bring these things to life. And I can see how perhaps people would need to be monitored with you. You said a risk of burning the house down, or I can imagine risk of letting a bath run over, and all these things. You can't watch someone 24/7.
The other is that if you've got somebody who's a bit of a wanderer, and I'm aware of this, living on the Gold Coast, there was a family not long ago who dad would just go out for a walk, and for a long time he would just go around the block. And then one day he got lost going around the block, and they had to get the police to come and look for him. So when we're starting to get to that sort of position in life where the safety of the person who desperately wants to stay at home can't be guaranteed by their own actions, we basically have no choice. And aged care is the safest place for our loved ones, even though we may not want it to happen.
And just to clarify, Gayle, you mentioned respite, which we'll be covering in our next episode. Just to clarify, is there an instant stay where respite becomes unavailable and is not actually an option?
Yes, if they've had their ACAT done in hospital and it's an emergency ACAT, we often find that they will not even tick the box for a residential respite as part of the concern for the safety of the loved one. And I know that that sounds totally bizarre, but the key to having access to respite is having, in most instances, is having your ACAT assessment, so your aged care assessment team come visit, assess the person's health and well-being, having that done at home.
That is such a helpful piece of information, because I could imagine, sadly, people just taking the option of having this ACAT assessment done in hospital with an unintended consequence of them not being able to have the option of respite and going straight into permanent care.
In all the times that I have seen an ACAT done in hospital, and there's been a lot of times over the years, I think there's only been one ever where the person had residential respite approved. Most of the others do not not go straight to jail, but go straight to aged care.
That's amazing, Gayle. Thank you so much for helping us decode this big topic of aged care. Gayle, how can people reach you?
They can email me on Gayle, Gayle, at prosperityplanning.com.au, or they can call me on 0407 159 298.
Thank you so much, Gayle. And I would like to remind our international listeners, if they would like to join our Facebook group, Age, Pension, Super and Retirement, the code word is RED. And as always, this is information and opinion only and never personal advice. Thank you so much, Gayle McHugh.
You are more than welcome, Yvonne.